Back in February, we signed a deal with the architecture firm Rolf Judd for the sailing barge Ardwina. We thought it'd be nice to take the Edith May up to London to meet Ardwina, have a photo shoot in front of Tower Bridge, and come back down in company. So we worked hard to get the barge ready for the end of April. It's about 50 miles to get to London from Lower Halstow, so we decided to do it in two legs, with the first day heading to Gravesend, and then the second day going up to London and meeting the Ardwina. There was a fresh northerly wind blowing when we left Halstow, and it left us thinking that maybe the conditions in the estuary were going to be a bit minging. Normally, if you were making a passage to London, you'd leave Halstow at high water and take the little bit of ebb down to Sheerness, where you'd anchor for a bit and wait for the flood tide to go up the river. But with the north wind giving us a fetch or a reach up the river, we decided we'd just push on. So we hammered on with the engine and got down there. Once we got through the worst of the slop, it was time to cook some brekkie, whilst the rest of the crew set to and tidied up the barge, because being the first sail of the year, there's always things that need re-leading and whatnot. We made an average of about 5 knots despite the full ebb tide against us, which was pretty good progress, and we reached Gravesend in good time. Gravesend Town Pontoon's been an excellent facility that the barge has utilised many times over the last decade or so, and the team that run it are always very accommodating. It's a good place to lay overnight. The next day dawned much brighter for our leg up to London, and we got underway under power to start with, but by the time we got round to Longreach, we were under sail and enjoying a nice little sail up the river. The first leg from Gravesend up to Woolwich is pretty dull. Apart from the QE2 bridge and a bit of shipping, there's not much going on. But once you get to Woolwich, the river comes alive and you start seeing some of the iconic sights of London, which is always spectacular. We wanted to get to Tower Bridge a little bit before high water, get the Ardwina out of the dock and meet her and have a little photo shoot in front of the bridge, and then make all haste back down the river, because we wanted to try and make Queenborough by low water. Once we got round the corner at Wapping, the iconic Tower Bridge came into sight. We'd made good time, and then we had the bonus of being in company with the Gladys, who was waiting for a bridge lift to go through Tower Bridge up to London Bridge. We swung the barge over onto the south side of the river and just stemmed the last of the flood tide, waiting for the Ardwina. Meanwhile, in St Catherine Docks, the Ardwina was preparing to leave, and it marked the end of an era for the barge, Willie, and the Rolf Judd team. Willie's been the skipper for pretty well the whole time that Rolf Judd's owned the barge, and so this coming out of St Catherine Docks for the last time was quite a big moment, really. Tom the mate chucks the St Catherine's crew a shoreline just to help the barge make the tight turn through the bridge and then into the lock. Willie's well loved and respected by all those associated with the barge and in St Catherine's Dock, and with one final wave of the hand, a quick goodbye, Ardwina leaves the dock. She made her way through the lock gates and out into the river to join Edith May, and in a lovely moment, Tower Bridge lifted and the Gladys came through. So we had 3 barges, all in a line, ready for our drone photographer to get a really nice, iconic shot. With the tide about to turn, there was no time to lose, so Willie opened up the engine and got Ardwina humming along, doing about 8 knots. And even with us under full sail and engine, we could barely keep up with him as he sailed off into the distance. By the time we'd reached the Woolwich barrier, Willie was already pretty much a mile ahead, and we thought that was probably going to be the last we saw of him. Until a little bit further down the river, suddenly we see the Ardwina setting gear. I thought something funny is going on. It quickly became apparent that Ardwina's engine had failed, and they'd set the gear and sailed out of the channel and anchored at Crayford Neck. A little workboat had heard what had happened on the radio and came over to offer some assistance, and we rafted the 2 barges up and motored downriver in company. What's gone wrong? Oh dear. Story of the day. Our resident engineer Tim got straight to work and diagnosed the problem as being a faulty fuel pump, found the replacement and fitted it, and by the time we got back to Gravesend, we'd got the engine back up and running. Yep. As we'd wasted too much time frigging about in the river, we abandoned our plans to make Queenborough and instead headed back to Gravesend. As we settled in for the evening, we gazed across the river to see the Blue Mermaid sailing up to Greenwich, where she was going to become a floating cinema. And then we headed back down below to toast new beginnings for the Ardwina.
Right, here we go, guys. Whee! Very exciting future.
It was an early start for both barges, with Ardwina back under her own power, first to head off, and once again tearing off into the distance. Having made the entrance of the Medway by low water, both barges could relax as they still had 5 hours until there would be enough tide to get into Lower Halstow dock. So Ardwina set her gear and sailed in company with Edith May into the Medway, her new home. Unfortunately, the cold weather became wet and dank, and we made for Stangate Creek, where we once again rafted up whilst we waited for the tide to get into Halstow. Although Tiller and Will had owned the barge since February, with her now sailing into our home waters of Halstow Creek, it felt like this was the moment that the previous era ended and a new one began for the barge. Although the Welcome Committee only consisted of one lone kayaker, Ardwina is going to be made to feel incredibly welcome here at Lower Halstow, which has just become, in the last few years, a real little hub of historic ships. with sailing barge Tollesbury, Whistle Smack Thistle, Edith May and now Ardwina, all based in the dock. Whilst it's been fantastic to sail the Ardwina back from London in company with the Edith May, the reality is she needs a lot of work doing to her before she can take a full part in Tiller and Will sailing programme again. We're going to detail what needs doing in a future video, and then we'll track the progress and see how we get on.